Thank you for staying along for me on this ride. And now we proceed to part 2 of the AZ-900. And in this section, we're going to be talking about the architecture and the services within Azure. Within this section, you'll be introduced to the core architectural components of Azure. You will learn about the physical organization of Azure data centers, availability zones, regions, and you will learn about the organizational structure of Azure Resources and resource groups, subscriptions, and management groups. To create and use Azure services, you'll need an Azure subscription. When you're working with your own application and business needs, you will need to create an Azure account, and subscription will be created for you afterwards. After you create an account, you're free to create additional subscriptions. For example, your company might be using a single Azure account for your business and separate subscriptions for development, marketing, and sales departments. After you created the Azure subscription, you can start creating Azure resources within each subscription. If you are new to Azure, you can sign up for a free account on the Azure website to start exploring at no cost to you. When you're ready, you can choose to upgrade your free account. You can also create a new subscription that enables you to start paying for Azure services you need beyond the limits of your account. You can purchase Azure directly from Microsoft by signing up on Azure website through a Microsoft representative. You can also purchase Azure through a Microsoft partner, and cloud solution provider partners offer a wide range of complete managed cloud solutions for Azure. So what is the Azure free tier? The Azure free tier includes free access to popular Azure products for 12 months and a credit to use in the first 30 days and access to more than 25 products that are always free. And note, this can change. So by the time you listen to this, just double check on the free account because it changes frequently without warning. So just take a look at it. The Azure free account is an excellent way for new users to get started and explore. To sign up, you'll need a phone number, a credit card, and a Microsoft or GitHub account, right? The credit card information is used for identity verification only. You will not be charged for any services until you upgrade to a paid subscription. And if you are trying to get into the world of Azure, I highly recommend this option. I use it all the time just to learn, to understand, especially when I was getting started. So let's dive into the architectural components. In this section, you will be introduced to the core architectural components of Azure. You will learn about the physical organization of Azure, data centers, availability zones, and regions. And you will learn about the organization structure of Azure Resources and resource groups, subscriptions, and management groups. A region represents a collection of data centers, provides flexibility and scale, preserve data residency, select regions close to your users, be aware of regions, deployment, availability. There are global services that are regions independent. Let's talk about availability zones, our physical separated data centers within an Azure region. Each availability zone is made up of one or more data centers equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking. An availability zone is set up to be an isolation boundary. If one zone goes down, the other continues working. Availability zones are connected through high-speed private fiber optic networks. Some cool additional features about it: they're physically separated locations within Azure regions, takes availability sets to the next level, includes one or more data centers equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking, acts as an isolation boundary, and if one availability zone goes down, the other one continues to work. Most Azure regions are paired with another region within the same geographic location, at least 300 miles away. This approach allows for the replication of resources across a geography that helps reduce the likelihood of interruptions because of events such as natural disasters, civil unrest, power outages, or physical network outages that affect an entire region. For example, if a region is paired was affected by a natural disaster, services would automatically fail over to the other region pair. Let's talk about an example of a region in pairs in Azure are West US paired with East US and Southeast Asia paired with East Asia. Because of the pair regions are directly connected and far enough apart to be isolated from regional disasters, you can use them to provide reliability services and data redundancy. Additional advantages of regional pairs. If an extensive Azure outage occurs, one region out of every pair is prioritized to make sure at least one is restored as quickly as possible for application hosted in that regional pair, right? Plan Azure updates are rolled out into pair regions, one region at a time to minimize downtime and the risk of application outages. Data continues to reside within the same geography as its pair, except for Brazil South for a tax and law enforcement jurisdiction purposes. In addition to regular regions, Azure also has sovereign regions. Sovereign regions are instances of Azure that are isolated from the main instance of Azure. You may need to use sovereign regions for compliance or legal purposes. Azure sovereign regions includes the U.S. DoD Central, the U.S. Gov Virginia, the U.S. Gov Iowa, and more. These regions are physically and logically networked, isolated instances of Azure for the U.S. government, agencies, and partners. These data centers are operated by screened U.S. personnel and include additional compliance certifications. China East, China North, and more. These regions are available through a unique partnership between Microsoft and 21 VNet, whereby Microsoft doesn't directly maintain the data centers. The management infrastructure includes Azure Resources and resource groups, subscriptions, and accounts. Understanding the hierarchical organization will help you plan your projects and products within Azure. A resource is the basic building blocks of Azure. Anything you create, provision, deploy, etc. is a resource. Virtual machines is a resource. Virtual networks is a resource. Databases, cognitive services, all resources within Azure. Resource groups are simply grouping of resources. When you come and create a resource, you're required to place it into a resource group. While resource groups can contain many resources, a single resource can only be in one resource group at a time. That's very important. Let me repeat that. While a resource group can contain many resources, a single resources can be only in one resource group at a time. Some resources may be moved between resource groups, but when you move a resource to a new group, it will no longer be associated with the former group. Additionally, resource groups can't be nested, meaning you can't put a resource group B inside of resource group A. Resource groups provide a convenient way to group resources together. In Azure, subscriptions are a unit of management, billing, and scale. Similar to how resource groups are the way to logically organize resources, subscriptions allow you to logically organize your resource groups and facilitate billing. Using Azure requires an Azure subscription. A subscription provides you with authenticated and authorized access to Azure products and services. It also allows you to provision resources. An Azure subscription links to Azure account, which is identity in Azure Active Directory, or in a directory that runs in AD Trust. An account can have one subscription or multiple subscriptions. Let me say that again because that's going to be on a test. An account can have one subscription or multiple subscriptions. The final piece of the management group resources are gathered into resource groups, and resource groups are gathered into subscriptions. If you just start in Azure, that might seem like enough hierarchy to keep things organized. But imagine if you are dealing with multiple applications, multiple development teams, and multiple geographies. Important facts about management groups. 10,000 management groups can be supported in a single directory. A management group tree can support up to 6 levels of depth. This limit doesn't include the root level or the subscription level. Each management group and subscription can only have one parent.